Tom Donahue, Tom Donahue and Bob Mitchell were two very big, popular DJs in Philadelphia in the late 50s, early 60s, and basically had to get out of town because of the whole payola scandal, which they were implicated in. And they decided to come out here. I think they kind of looked at LA and thought, no, there's too much competition. But they saw the Bay Area and saw there was a market that they could move into. And when they came to town, they took over. They soon became the most popular. Not only the most popular disc jockeys in the area, they turned KYA into like the powerhouse AM station in the whole of Northern California. And not only that, on a sort of a national scale, they turned it into one of the what they call breaker stations, where they were a well-known station, but like picking up on a potential hit record and breaking it, turning it into a local hit that would then be picked up by other stations around the country and turn it into a national hit. So they very quickly, asserted themselves in this arena and became, consequently powerful. And they translated that into the sort of circuit of sock hops that they would, throw every Friday, Saturday night, venues all around the Bay Area. And then just going on to bigger things, looked at the Cow Palace, which is this huge kind of hall that had been built in, I think, the late 50s, principally for, showing cattle and stuff and rodeos and things. It wasn't conceivable as a music venue at that time, but they took a chance, pulled in a lot of favors. Basically everyone that performed there, performed there for free. It's like, hey, you want your record played in this market, you're going to perform at our thing for free. Like I say, very well known for breaking records. They broke the Byrds, Mr. Tambourine Man, they broke Glove and Spoonful, Do You Believe in Magic, those sorts of records. But they also, they were a little cheeky. They had Autumn Records with the Bob Brummels and Bobby Freeman, and they were playing these records on their shows and stuff. There was a definite conflict of interest. An interesting thing about Tom Donahue is that, he'd come up with ideas and angles and things he wanted to pursue, but he often lost interest in them very quickly, which is, interesting for Sly, because once he recognized that Sly was capable of going in a recording studio and running a session, making sure he got a good performance in the group, and communicating with the engineer, and doing what a producer should do, he basically let him do what he wanted. Within reason. Donahue would stick his head in for early sessions, say by the Bob Brummels or the Great Society or whatever, but most of the time Sly was the one who actually had to deal with the artists, and so he was really just giving him a kind of a carte blanche to experiment and learn more about the studio and how to work with artists, and also to experiment with in a sort of with forms in popular music that you wouldn't expect a kind of a young brash 21-year-old guy, African American guy to be doing. And could certainly understood how to fine tune that kind of music as much as anything. And then he was dealing with the sort of nascent alternative underground groups that were starting to percolate through, the Great Society, the Charlatans, the Warlocks, who later became the Grateful Dead. He produced audition sessions on both the Warlocks and the Charlatans, and the Great Society. He spent many hours in the studio attempting to kind of get them to, to his mind, lay down a decent track. These were like bohemian, bohemian, youngsters, or relative youngsters in their early 20s, who to them it was an art project. It wasn't, they weren't aimed at the charts. They weren't aimed at they weren't a schlock nightclub group like a lot of the other acts that that Sly had worked with in that time. They were kind of really looking at experimenting, and at first I think Sly had a real problem with it. There's the legendary story that for the Great Society song "Free Advice," he drove him through 53 takes. And when you listen to the session tape, it's just he's patently irritated. Listen to Hot Fun in the Summertime. That's a total it sounds like a theme from A Summer Place at the beginning. He's like a magpie. He's picking up on all these different popular music things. And I think the Autumn Records period was really the great kind of sort of foundry for him in that aspect. You listen to a lot of the teen rock records he did with the Vegetables or the Mojo Men, the Chosen Few, or some of the garage band type things. There's fuzz guitar on those, 12 strings, tambourines, different ideas, and he put all of those into the Family Stone. She's My Baby by the Mojo Men goes the fattest fuzz bass you ever heard. Sounds like Larry's playing on the Dance to Music album, except it's 3 years before. And there's lots of little lyric ideas too. That's the other thing you notice, that in the autumn period that he took later. For example, there's a Bobby Freeman song, "I'll Never Love, Never Will I Love Again." Ended up on the second Family Stone album. In a different arrangement, but it's basically the same tune. And there's some real other smart little word bits and here and there. You hear "Take My Advice" or the "Dance All Night." Different little things. Words, phrases he put into later songs. So he was definitely already kind of on a creative roll.